Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 things that you need to do as a rising senior before the fall of your senior year. But before we get started, I want to address 2 things. First of all, sorry if my voice sounds weird in this video. I'm battling a sinus infection. And second of all, if you want more resources, check out the description box below. The first thing that I recommend you do is to actually start making a resume, because this will help you if you are applying to colleges that require you to list your activities. This is really common for the Common app, the Coalition app, and also the UC applications, as well as some other colleges as well. Now, this doesn't have to be a formal document yet, but it is also a good idea to have a resume in place when you start to request recommendation letters for scholarships. So if you want to try to make it a bit more formal, there are some templates available online for free. You can just search for them. They also have them on Google Docs and Canva. I personally prefer a more traditional looking resume that doesn't have colors and fancy fonts, but it's fair game to use some of those templates as well. Even if you're not ready to start to worry about the formal format of a resume, it's a good idea just to make a running list either in your phone or on a Google Doc and start to brainstorm the different activities or jobs that you've had over the past 3 years. So you want to list the things that you've done starting your 9th grade or your freshman year. Don't go back any farther than that. You also want to start to really prioritize things that you've done for a longer period of time or things that you've done more recently, because that's going to matter when you actually start to put your resume together. If you would like more clarity on how to compose a resume, I do have a video that I made last summer that I will link in the iCards above. I would love it if you would check that out. That goes through the process step by step, so that way you can start your resume. Now that you have a tentative resume, whether it is a list in your phone or something more formal, you want to look at your list objectively and see if there are any gaps that you could fill in this summer. It's important to remember that colleges are very aware of the fact that for many students, the past year and a half of their lives has been altered by COVID-19, and their high school experience is very different than perhaps what they had intended, because they had to learn virtually or they didn't have the same opportunities to pursue different jobs or internships or clubs, things like that. So don't be too worried about that as you're putting your resume together. However, you do want to actually think about what can you do this summer. And a lot of times what I see is when students are trying to compose a resume, they cast a wide net, and I think students think they're being well-rounded when they do this. So they do a little bit of everything. That's not necessarily bad, but at the same time, especially for some of the more competitive colleges, they're looking for a student who is well-rounded in the sense that they have a couple very developed interests. So you want to make sure that there's sort of like a theme to what you do, and honestly, not everything that you've done necessarily belongs on your resume either. So it's okay to prioritize the things that you're more passionate about to show the colleges who you actually are. So let's say you're looking at your resume and you realize that you don't have any work experience. This could be formal or informal. Well, one of the things you could do this summer is potentially apply for a job. Now, let's say there's no job openings near where you are. Maybe you could do something a bit informal. Maybe you could babysit or detail cars or wash cars or something a little bit more on your own and independent. That would still count as work experience if you're being paid. Now, let's say you have no volunteer experience. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to volunteer over the summer. So use the summer to your advantage. Another potential opportunity is to take some summer classes. You might be able to take classes at a local college or community college and get some college credit in the process and study something that you're interested in. So try to think about different ways that you can pursue the interests that you already have, and that way you have a fun and meaningful summer, but it's also helping your resume. In terms of filling in the gaps on your resume, it's important to also plan for the fall semester. So perhaps some of the activities you're doing this summer could be continued into the fall, and that would give you a little bit more longevity. Something else to consider, though, is the different activities that you'll do at school. So maybe you have a ranking position in a club, something like a president or secretary, and you're responsible for helping plan or coordinate different activities. It might be beneficial to start to plan some of that now. Obviously, there's going to be limitations because you might need access to different things and you might need to talk to different club sponsors and all that jazz. But it can be a really good idea to start to plan ahead. That way it's less stress on you in the fall. And if there's any hiccups along the way, you can deal with them sooner rather than later. Because for a lot of students, some of the big experiences they have happen during the fall of their senior year. The third thing that I recommend you do the summer before your senior year is to start talking to your parents or guardians very openly and honestly about what you want for your future. Now, you don't have to have everything all figured out. You don't have to know exactly which college you want to go to just yet or what you want to major in, But it is important to start to have some of those potentially more difficult conversations about where you might be applying and the finances behind it, things like that, because it's good to kind of have an understanding of where your parents or guardians are coming from, but also it's very important that you have a voice in this process as well. It's also a good idea to potentially reach out to your high school guidance counselor if you're starting to have questions. Now, they may or may not be available very much over the summer, but at least when the fall semester starts, you can hit the ground running in that sense. Fourth thing that I recommend you do this summer is to make a college list. So I actually have a video on this already that I will link in the iCards above. It's important to remember that, like a resume, this can be a growing list. It's okay to add colleges to it. It's okay to take colleges off of it once you decide you may or may not want to go there. It's just a way to kind of get the lay of the land. And as you start to do research on the schools that you might be applying to, it's actually a really good way to get excited about the college process itself. And so there are a few really good resources out there that I recommend. There are different websites like College Find that can help you generate a list based on your preferences and interests. So that way you can potentially look at more schools, even some schools that you might not have heard of. And if you already do have kind of like a set list, like maybe you want to stay in state and you only want to apply to a few schools, that's okay too. I recommend that you at least start with maybe 3 schools, 3 to 5 roughly. You don't necessarily have to apply to all 3 to 5 of those schools, but you want to make sure that you have some options, because depending on the major that you might want to major in or what your financial situation is, you want to give yourself some options. As you are making your college list, be sure to check out the website of the different colleges to see how they present themselves and what opportunities they have. And then depending on your circumstances, if possible, you might want to actually consider trying to have a college visit to some of your top choice schools. So if there's a few that you're trying to decide between, sometimes it's really good to go to them in person and take a tour if you're able to. Based on my own observations of my own students, I've noticed that there are different times during the fall semester of a person's senior year that get really busy really quickly. So it can be very helpful to plan ahead. So this could look like a couple different things. Some students do well with just plugging it into their phone calendar. Other students like to create spreadsheets. But you want to be able to have important dates already in your phone so that you can plan ahead. So as far as college applications, you want to start to put the application deadlines in your phone, because if you're applying early action or early decision, you might have an earlier date of like October or November that you need to be mindful of. And that could create issues if you're scrambling at the last minute. Now, some applications have December deadlines. Other ones have January or February deadlines. So you want to make sure that you are putting those dates in your phone so that you can plan ahead. That would include knowing when you might need to write the personal statements if the application has one, and also when you need to ask for letters of recommendation, things like that. So put those dates in your phone based on your college list once you've finalized that college list. The other thing that you need to do is you need to start to think about the different senior-related activities this fall, because you want to enjoy your senior year. So if your school has already released certain things like the homecoming days or whatever it is that you're interested in, you might want to put those on your calendar as well, especially if you are the type of person who has an outside job, because you want to make sure that if you want to go to these activities that you can ask off so you can enjoy them during your senior year. Something else to consider is that if any of your applications have a personal statement, you want to start to write a rough draft of that personal statement over the summer, because typically it requires multiple drafts. So I do have some videos on personal statements as well. And so I would definitely recommend that you start to think about these as you start to look at your college list, because not every school requires a personal statement, but some do, and you want to start to get a head start on these things. Don't forget to check out the description box below. I will include links to different resources that I think would be helpful to you as a rising senior, resources about resumes, college lists, and college application essays. That way you can get a head start this summer. So until next time, guys, happy writing!